The road to Ashwood Lane was nearly swallowed by the forest, a thin gray ribbon of cracked asphalt that seemed to have been forgotten by the world, and as Arjun guided his rusted rental car down its length, he felt a growing weight in his chest. A pressure that seemed to come not from the tight steering wheel or the incline of the hill, but from the air itself, thick and stagnant, as though the trees had been holding their breath for decades, waiting for someone foolish enough to come this way again. The town he had passed through just 20 minutes earlier, Hollow Creek, had been the kind of place you forget as soon as you leave. Rows of shuttered shops and faces that seemed carved from suspicion, but when he asked for directions to Ashwood Lane, when he spoke the name of the house that had drawn him all the way out here, those faces changed. Lips pressed shut, eyes turned down, as though even acknowledging it gave the place strength. Only one old man at the gas station had muttered a warning in a cracked voice. "Don't go up there, son. The house don't let people leave." But Arjun had only half listened because he didn't believe in ghosts. Not really, though something deep inside him shivered like a dog sensing thunder when he turned onto the final stretch of road and saw the house rising ahead. It was not just abandoned, it was consumed. Every inch of it gnawed by time, yet still standing with a defiant malice, its Victorian gables twisting upward like black teeth, its windows empty but somehow watching. The roof sagged, shingles scattered like scabs peeling away, and ivy strangled the brick walls in green ropes. But the most unsettling thing was the porch, which leaned forward as though eager to greet him, eager to take him in. Arjun parked at the edge of the dirt path, the tires crunching over dead leaves, and killed the engine. For a moment, there was silence so complete that even his own breath seemed too loud. And then came the faintest sound, a low creak, as though the house had sighed at his arrival. He wasn't alone. Mira sat beside him in the passenger seat, arms crossed tightly, her eyes fixed on the looming structure. She had been against this from the start, and though she hadn't spoken much during the drive, Arjun could read the tension in her every gesture. "We shouldn't," she whispered, as though the house itself might overhear her. "We can take a picture from here and say we went in." But Arjun, ever the skeptic, ever the thrill-seeker, shook his head and forced a grin, masking his own unease with bravado. "Come on, it's just an old house. People make up stories to scare kids. We'll go in, look around, maybe find something cool, and leave. Half an hour, tops." Mira didn't reply, only tightened her jacket around her, but she followed when he pushed open the car door and stepped out into the brittle air. The trees swayed, though there was no wind, and the gravel crunched like bones beneath their shoes as they approached the porch. Each step felt heavier than it should have, as if the ground resisted them. But at last, they stood before the door, tall and swollen with rot, its paint blistered into strange shapes that looked like faces frozen in screams. Arjun reached for the handle, expecting resistance, but it turned easily, almost eagerly, and the door groaned open into darkness. The smell struck first, a thick mix of mildew, dust, and something coppery, faint but sharp, like blood long dried into wood. The floorboards sagged as they stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the gloom to reveal walls lined with peeling wallpaper, faded roses curling into themselves, and portraits hung crookedly, their subjects blurred with age yet eerily intact, eyes glinting faintly in the beams, cobwebs draped from the ceiling like funeral cloth, and the silence was not silence at all, but a kind of muffled hum, as though the house itself breathed just beneath the edge of hearing. "I don't like this," Mira said again, her voice too loud in the cavernous hall. Arjun ignored her, forcing his light across the room, and froze when it caught on something in the far corner. A child's rocking chair, painted white, though yellowed with age, swaying gently back and forth, though no one touched it. Mira gasped, clutching his arm. But Arjun forced a laugh, though it came out hollow. "Probably the draft," he muttered. But even as he said it, he knew there was no draft. The air was thick and still as a tomb. They moved deeper, their footsteps echoing strangely, as though there were more than two pairs of feet, as though something walked just out of sight, following their rhythm. The living room sprawled ahead, its fireplace choked with ash, and on the mantel stood a cracked porcelain doll, its face split into jagged lines, one glass eye missing, the other staring with a cold intensity that seemed far too aware. Arjun moved quickly past it, refusing to acknowledge the chill prickling his skin, and pulled Mira toward a side door, which opened into a narrow hallway lined with doors. The first led to what had once been a study. The desk was overturned, papers scattered across the floor like fallen leaves, and on the wall behind it, words were scratched deep into the plaster, carved with desperation. "Don't look at her." The letters gouged into the wall seemed fresh, edges sharp as if carved yesterday. Mira whimpered, backing toward the hall, but Arjun, heart-hammering, forced himself to look closer. The scratches were deep, almost impossibly so, as if made with more than just hands, as if someone had clawed them into existence. He snapped a quick photo with his phone, as though documenting it might make it less real, and turned back to Mira. "It's just vandalism," he insisted, though the words tasted like lies. But Mira wasn't listening. She stood rigid, her flashlight trembling toward the far end of the hallway, where the darkness seemed thicker, almost solid, and within it, just for a heartbeat, Arjun thought he saw the outline of a girl, small and thin, her head tilted unnaturally, her hair hanging in wet strands across her face. Then the light flickered, and she was gone. Arjun's breath caught in his throat as the image of the girl lingered in his mind, refusing to fade, even as the hallway seemed empty again, and he shook his head violently, telling himself it had been a trick of the light, a smear of dust across the lens of his vision. But Mira's pale face told him she had seen it too, and the way she gripped his arm with nails digging into his skin left no room for denial. "We need to go," she whispered, but her words fell flat in the heavy air, and some stubborn, reckless part of Arjun refused to turn back so soon, not when he had come all this way, not when proof of the house's reputation seemed to pulse in every shadow. "Just a little longer," he said, though his voice lacked conviction, and before she could argue, he pushed open another door, revealing a bedroom frozen in decay. The bed frame collapsed inward, mattress rotted through, but on the nightstand sat a book, its cover warped and swollen yet somehow intact. He reached for it, and dust plumed into the air like the exhalation of something long buried. Mira stayed at the threshold, muttering under her breath, prayers or pleas. Arjun couldn't tell, as he pried the book open and realized it was a diary. The first pages were smeared beyond legibility, but farther in the ink remained, faded but clear enough to read by the trembling beam of his flashlight. October 12, 1893. Father has locked the doors again. He says the sickness comes from outside, but I know it comes from him. Mother does not speak anymore. She only stares. I hear footsteps in my room at night, but no one is there. Arjun swallowed hard, flipping further, and each entry drew the portrait of a girl suffocating within these walls, her words growing more frantic, more uneven, until entire sentences were scratched over as though she had tried to erase her own thoughts. One entry froze him cold. November 3, 1893. The woman in the mirror is not me. She smiles when I do not. I think she wants me to stay here forever. The handwriting collapsed into jagged lines, ink splattering as though the pen had been driven into the page with violent force, and then nothing, the diary ending abruptly. Arjun closed it quickly, shoving it back onto the nightstand as though the act might undo what he had read. Mira was crying quietly now, her voice trembling. "We should never have come here, Arjun. This place isn't empty, it's waiting." He wanted to comfort her, but the words stuck in his throat, because deep inside he knew she was right. Still, something compelled him onward. A pull that felt less like curiosity, and more like compulsion, as though the house itself tugged at his veins, urging him deeper. They returned to the hall, and the air seemed colder now, so cold their breath fogged before them, though outside had been warm. The silence had changed too, no longer flat but layered, carrying with it faint whispers that skittered at the edge of hearing. Mira clutched his sleeve, dragging him toward the exit, but when they turned the corner, the front door was gone. The hall stretched endlessly in both directions, warped like a funhouse mirror, doors multiplying along its length, each identical, each closed. "No, no, no," Mira whispered, spinning in circles, her light cutting across walls that would not stay still, and Arjun felt his knees weaken as reality bent beneath them. He forced himself forward, gripping one doorknob and yanking it open, but the room beyond was not the porch, not freedom, but another bedroom, this one pristine, as though time had not touched it. The bed was neatly made, a doll resting on the pillow, and on the far wall hung a mirror, tall and ornate. Something moved within it, something that should have been their reflections, but wasn't. In the glass, the room was the same, but